everyone, it's 6 o'clock. Thank you for joining us for tonight's virtual program, Intro to Graphic Design. My name's Mary and I work with the St. Louis Public Library. Before I turn it over to our presenter, Anna, I just wanted to run over a few housekeeping details. If you could please mute yourself during the program and only unmute yourself when talking. You can do this by selecting the microphone icon on the screen. And there's no requirement to have your camera on. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to submit during the program, please use the chat feature in Google Meet. And also, this program is recorded this evening, so you can find it on the library's YouTube page for later viewing. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mary. Sorry, I know it's our first time we've met virtually. I go by Anna. And just so people know, I am a freelance graphic designer. I work for myself with mostly small businesses with clients around St. Louis, but also far. Since everything's virtual now, everyone's aware of how easy that is. I mostly specialize in branding and identity. So I do a lot of logo designs and the whole process of branding. I also do motion graphics, and I'm a maker at the Made Makerspace, which is in the West End here in St. Louis. So I have a presentation to share with you guys before we can hopefully jump into a small project. And we're going to use a free software that is online. So I'm going to put that in the chat. This is a free photo editing software. So hopefully you guys have some images we can play around with. And it's just kind of to get your feet wet into how photo editing and graphic design kind of works. And there's so many different softwares out there now. And if you guys have apps on your phone, there's a million things to do. Even Instagram and Snapchat, those have elements of graphic design you can add to images. So there's so many resources out there for you now that it's kind of unlimited. And we don't have to use professional software until you're ready for that level. So I'm going to start my presentation. See if I can. Can someone turn their mic on and let me know that you can see this?
I can see it.
Awesome.
I can see it, yeah.
All right. So what we're going to go over are 5 core principles of graphic design. And that is symmetry versus asymmetry, scale, framing, hierarchy, and grids. So symmetry versus asymmetry is about balance and energy. And I'm going to explain how that works through some visuals. So symmetry versus asymmetry is very organic or straight. So when it's symmetry, you can put a line right through things. So as you can see with the picture on the left, you can put a line right through the middle and the center, and it's perfect. Asymmetry is a little bit more random and more fluid. You can't actually put the same type of line through these images. Dynamic symmetry is more about movement and space. So we can still have a line through these because it's still symmetrical, but showing different scale and different alignments allow for more movement of your eye. So the first image, all things are in a row, it's a perfect straight line. The middle image, they're all in the center, but the circle in the middle is larger, but it's still symmetrical and balanced. The last photo, the circles are larger and they're a little cropped, so they're kind of cropped from the edges. You can't really tell it's a full circle, but it's still symmetrical. There's 4 of them, they create a shape, and you can put the line right through that. Asymmetry that's dynamic is still very fluid. There's these circles, then each one is building and building. So there's creating a movement through each piece and composition. So how this works through typography or using letter forms can range different styles. So the first image shows the text broken up, And that kind of creates this drama through this very perfect typeface, but now it's kind of intriguing. Like, why is it broken up like that? And it's not very symmetrical on how it's broken, but the type in the composition itself is symmetrical. And in the second image, it's again straight in the center, but changing the scale of things makes it more appeasing, and it still keeps the symmetry there, but it just changes that up a little bit. And dynamic asymmetry, has a little bit more movement through the whole composition. So in the first one, your eye most likely should go directly to the bold word. But if you keep staring at it, you're going to start to see extra movement. You can see it here in this white space, here right next to this open space. So there's a lot of fluidity in a composition like that. In the second image, your eye kind of brings it down. So it starts one and just directly goes down. And that's as the type is building on each other. It adds more fluid motion. And here are some examples of some posters and how the difference of asymmetry and symmetry can act on these. So mountains as a landscape is asymmetrical. They're never going to be perfect, but they're perfect as is, right? So using typography around this kind of creates more of that motion that reflects the mountain skyline. And here is just some placeholder text that could be call to action about the mountains itself. And they're spaced out differently to show that it can be random. And again, it's more about how fluid it is. And in this photo of the beach, it's very straightforward. Everything's very centered and perfect. The word beach is sitting right on top of that ocean line with the call to action right on the bottom. So you can see how there's two different styles here, and it can flow very easily, and it's different through each one. Okay, now we're going to talk about scale. Scale is about relationship and what one object is relative to another. So how large is this circle and compared to where it is? So in this first image, you can see that this circle obviously just seems smaller. And same with this image. Or maybe it's being cut out. And in this one, is it a circle on top of another circle? Oops. Or is it a border? So it's what is the relationship to each other? And again, through these images, they're very similar, but using a little bit of tone, you can kind of see that the distance and relationship changes. So in the first one, they're all the same color, but it still feels like the smallest circle is the furthest away. And in the second one, bringing it up a little bit, having that one highlighted in one color might make it appear bigger or more important. So this is kind of a quick mock-up of like a sun and the sea, right? And how big it can be changes the relationship. So here, very small, you can kind of see the bigger picture. And when you make it a lot bigger, you feel so much closer to the sun. So it's really about the relationship of the objects that are playing together. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is framing, which is about focus and clarity. So you guys have probably heard about this a lot through photography, and it's a very good thing in graphic design as well. One of the biggest things to know is about margins and bleeds, and this can work for a variety of different design styles. A margin is when there's a whole border that's an even border around the image or design. The next option is a full bleed. So that image could take up the entire page, or it could be a poster. And that's when there's no cropping there's no border, there's no outline of that image at all. It completely is off the page. So if you've ever printed at home, you're not going to get a full bleed image unless you happen to cut the edges of your paper. A partial bleed is similar, but there is part of the border there. And it doesn't have to be full center, just like the margin is. So cropping is another way to get the framing done. So you can have a full image with a margin or without. It can be a full bleed as well. And using the same image, I'm showing you that you can get a close-up or changing the perspective to make it an abstract image. So that really changes the composition and it changes what exactly you're trying to frame. So we could add text around this this plant in a circle. We can put it on the border of the edges here, or we could put it right in the middle of where this abstract is. And it's kind of framing your eye on what to look at. So using that idea, I try to use some text. And the first one has that full image with text bleeding off the edge. And using the close-up, that same image, but it's a lot more dramatic now because we scaled it up. And now it's how much larger is that item compared to the text. And making it more abstract is using that text as an outline, and that image is kind of masked behind it. So it makes it a little bit more intriguing and more interesting. So another example of framing is showing that border. So for the symmetry, it's a full border on the edges, everything straight down the center. In the asymmetry, it's kind of off to the side. It's showing the partial bleed. It's focusing your eye on the flamingo that's more on the side versus straight down the middle. And it still frames the text information. So there's many different ways that you can use these things already. All right, the next lesson is about hierarchy. And hierarchy is a lot about balance and organization and how to properly list your information. So this is a lot more about text and typography, but it doesn't have to be. It can be about images as well. In typography, it's very important that you have hierarchy if you're going to talk about information, because you have to help the reader understand what's important. So no hierarchy, just a big block of text is going to be your basic books, your novels, that it's just text. And there's no call out. There's no big headlines. There's no border. There's no big thing that keeps your eye on one part of the page. So then we start to think more of like newspapers and magazines and websites, and how do you create that hierarchy to help people read? So contrasting weight and color is the first step. Where are you going to bold something that helps the reader know that's important? Color, that's going to be the first thing that stands out, and that reader is going to know exactly what they need to look at. Alignment is another big tool that can help call out quotes, more headlines, more information. It's really good for recipes, things like that, that you might just need to align something and push it out. Now we add space. That's something very simple, but it helps create the hierarchy as well of information. And using cases. So uppercase and lowercase when it comes to typography, this just creates more of that hierarchy development without going too far beyond of scale and how you're going to create more design work around something. You have bold, simple uppercase text and lowercase text, and automatically the user knows that the uppercase is going to be the first thing they need to read. So examples of that in use without images are going to be something like business cards and menus. There's just going to be a lot of information, and how do you display it that makes the user understand what's important in a very simple way. So understanding the basics of it will then help you understand how to put it in a project. Something bigger. Okay, the next and last lesson is about grids and how we structure things. So the basic grid is horizontal and vertical lines that make a perfect square. And what this does is help create the user a space to design in without going with limitations. It helps them focus on their design and what their design can be. And this is just the basic grid. Grids can be diagonal, grids can be a variety of ways. What this does is it helps create space for where to go. So these are ideas of showing patterns and how information can be displayed through a grid. So we have pattern design that kind of can be separated, something very focused on the center, so something very symmetrical, and more asymmetrical here, where things can be laid out a whole bunch of different ways. Another way is for grids to help organize your design information, whether that's through blocks of images or blocks of text. So a perfect grid can change easily by just changing a couple lines. So this could be a header, there could be more images, and having white space in there also can help enhance the grid that you're designing. One grid is typically used for, let's say, a magazine. They're going to have one style grid throughout every single page, but they can break it up. So this same grid that is the basic grid, perfect horizontal and vertical squares, is used to create 3x3 grid in this image and this image, just by scaling different sizes here. So as an example of that, kind of going back to the photography, rule of thirds is a big word that they use in photography. It's also a more simplified of the basic grid. So it's just 2 horizontal lines, 2 vertical lines, and showing the same grid in 3 different layouts and how that information changes. So you can kind of break up that grid a little bit. Right now it's showing everything kind of very clear in boxes, but it's to show that it can be broken, and how you use the grid can help you determine where your objects and images go. And it just helps organize your information and gives you a structure on what to do. So you can see very clearly that there's a grid down the line, since there's all these images, but each one's a little bit different because the hierarchy of the information is changing. So in the first image, this call out here is more important than this information. And in the second image, having this image flipped is going to change where your eye is pointing, which makes the headline here more important as well. Okay, and now we're going to do a project. But before we continue, are there any questions?
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I had one quick question, and I was just wondering if you could list off the 5 elements you just spoke about, please.
Yes, and I can put that in the chat as well. It's symmetry versus asymmetry, scale, framing, hierarchy, and grids.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else have any questions? Okay, I will share my screen and kind of play with creating a poster using text and images, and using these principles that we talked about. And you can either just watch me if you would like to follow along. That link is in the chat. Hopefully you guys have some images you can work with. If you've downloaded some, great. You can feel free to download some now. There's a lot of free resources out there, or you can even use images you have. So again, I'm using a software that's free online, and hopefully it'll be easy to use, but I'll teach you guys some tricks. So let me share my screen again. Okay, so this is Pixlr. It's a free image software, And we're using X, not E. And that's because E is a little bit more advanced, and we're going to just start basic. If you guys have experience using some software, you can go ahead and hit E. But just to keep things easy, we'll start with the basic one. This does have ads. They're family friendly, but I know it might be distracting. It won't be on our screen as much when we open an image. So the cool part is this saves your work for you. So if you're working on something and you accidentally quit or the internet's out or something happens, your image stays on the web. So it doesn't go anywhere. You're not using your computer hard drive space to save your images and your work. So that's a great thing. And I've been using it without even having to create a login. So we're going to open a new image. And I am going to play with this lavender. And the first thing you get is to size an image. And it asks you if you want Ultra HD, full, or web. I want to create a little poster, and I'm going to make this 720 by 560, which is, it won't let me do that. Oh, because it's not web. 720 by 560 is a 5 by 10 poster. But it doesn't want me to do that because of the ratio, I guess. So we'll always go bigger because why not? Okay. And if you decide you don't like that, you can change your size, and I'll show you how to do that as well. Now, before I go through what things are, I want to show you the layout really quickly. The center where my image is my artboard. So this is where all my work is going to show up. On my left-hand side, this is my toolbar. My settings or preferences at the bottom. Home page is at the top, so you can always go back to that starter screen we were at. And then navigation and your layers panel. And the layers panel we're going to talk more about in just a moment. And at the bottom, you can see a save button, close, undo, and redo. This little toggle right here that highlights and says minimize, that's for the right side toolbar, but I'm going to leave it open so I can see it. So I was trying to play with the image size. We're going to go through this list of tools. This first one is properties. You can resize an image here if you need to. You can switch the canvas size, so the canvas size could be bigger. But know that there will be cropping that changes. So if I do that and make this 1,000, and you see how there's this checkerboard grid on the outside of this? That's because we changed it from 720 to 1,000, and now there's no information here. So this means that there's nothing there. It's just a hidden checkerboard. It's not even actually there. I'm just going to hit undo because we don't want that. You can flip your image. And the best part is when you highlight over these, it tells you what you're going to do. So it says flip vertical, flip horizontal. Now what this background shows, if I go back and resize my image again, that did not do it. Uh-oh. That's not working out. Maybe I did this one. Okay. Oh, I did the wrong one. Okay, so we're back to the transparent background, which is the secret hidden checkerboard. If I turn background on, there's going to be colored over that checkerboard. This still isn't something you want unless you want to create a border. By the way, I'm zooming in and out just by scrolling up and down through my trackpad here. So it was a little simple. But we don't want that. I just want my poster size image. The next part of the toolbar is how to arrange things. So this is relative to the layers panel on the right side. So you can unlock a layer or duplicate a layer. As you can see, this has a lock on it. That is because it's a background layer, because it's the first thing we started with. So it's always going to start locked. So I can unlock it, and now I'm free to actually move this around, or I'm free to rotate it. And that's because I unlocked the image. And if you notice, now that I unlocked it, there are more tools that popped up on the side toolbar. We have ways to rotate it. We have blending modes that I'll go through in a moment, and transparency, which is like how opaque an image is or not. You can also just trash this layer altogether, or you can duplicate it. And again, you can do the same thing in the layers panel. So we're still working on that background. The third image in the toolbar is the crop tool. The scissors lets you cut out shapes. So we'll start with AI cutout. AI cutout is going to use AI to look at your, oh yeah, you can't get this. It's okay, we don't want it. AI uses the computer to look at your image and visually see like what in the background would you not want here. So this is pretty obvious, like you might not want this purple background, but you want the flowers. But there are other ways to do that. So there's the shape cutout tool, magic cutout, draw cut, and lasso cut. So shape cutouts, make sure you keep different modes. There's different modes. There's keep and remove. Keep means you want to keep that background or whatever you're highlighting, you want to keep it there. Removing means it'll take it away. If I want to, now you get to pick your shape. If I want to remove a star from the top, I'm going to click and drag a star, which is now like going off the page, and then it just removes it. And you know that that's gone because of that checkerboard background that's there. Magic cutout depends on the tolerance of an image. So this one might be a little hard because I have a purple background and purple flower. So I'm going to show you what happens if I bring it up to 80 and just click. Everything that was about 80 of the same color purple is gone. So do you ever wonder why you see images that have no background but like white text on top of an image? They're getting rid of that background completely. And this is a very easy way to do that as long as the colors stand out differently from each other. So instead of doing 80, what if we try, we can try 13. See how like it's very, very fuzzy and very pixelated? That's bad because that's a lot to clean up and you don't want that. So it's probably going to be really hard to get that image out using this magic cutout tool. So we have draw cutout. So I can use my own size, which you can see on my screen, what's highlighted over the purple there. And the softness changes the border edge, and you can see that change on the brush size. So you can get a really hard edge or really soft edge. And I can just cut out shape. Let's try changing the softness a little. I just like cut that out completely. If I want to cut out the background, it's kind of like an eraser tool. Kind of just have to go over the images and erase it. So why would you want a soft or hard edge? If I go really soft and I want to try and get rid of this background, the softer edge, the more I won't ruin the flower. So sometimes having the feather and soft edge is good for that reason. So you don't get too exact and harsh lines around something that you want to keep. And the last one is the lasso. And this is similar to the drawing, but you kind of have a more free-form shape. And it's exactly how it sounds. You kind of create this dash lasso line. And there you go. The next image on the toolbar is this like half sun. And this is about image colors. And just click out of these ads here. So we can automatically make it black and white just by click of a button. We can invert the image, which is going to invert based on the colors that this image is. So that's why we get this green tone. And you can just play around with all of these features. Like adding 100% vibrance here is actually really cool. Just saturation, and just play around and see what things mean and how can it change your image that makes it look stronger for the story you want to tell. We can add more color in there. You can change the color completely. So maybe this won't really be a lavender picture, but a pink lavender picture. Make it softer. And then you can go down to even more, which is brightness and all of the little bit more photography tricks, but still good for editing photos and enhancing your images. So you can see a lot of these, and this little tiny triangle carrot that's upside down, you can click that and shrink the menu and you can get some more. So toning, that'll add more color to your image. Fill will actually color your image even deeper, so you can get like a colored background. Curves is going to change light and dark. Oh, per color, okay. We're not going to change it though. And autofix will kind of just, depending on what images you've set, what settings you've created already, it'll kind of just fix it in things that the computer thinks like, okay, how do we mesh this all together? So you can see what happens. I made it, it's very darker pink here. There's some more light up here and it's kind of exposed. But if I hit autofix, it kind of mutes it out a little bit and has more crisp to the flowers without having too much color in there. Filter is something that's very similar to what you do in Instagram or Snapchat, basic filters. But you get to have a little bit more flexibility here and get a little bit more detail. Everyone is different and each one is kind of like have to experiment with what they do. It's really easy to zoom in and see. Sharpen will crisp up certain lines of your image. Clarity will do the same with more deep tones. We can smooth out that process a little bit, make it blurry. It's really blurry. That might be good if this was going to be a background and we want to focus on something. Grain will make it actually grainy. You can see that texture in there now. A little hard to zoom in on this. Vignette creates that dramatic border. Fringe is like a little hazy and trippy, adding that color tone in there. Dehaze is a little bit more on the border and the outside, adding more dark tones. So there's so many you can play with. And there's even more effects, which are similar to the filters again. So you can just kind of click and add different ones, and you can change the current amount. And that's a very easy way to play with photos. So if any of you have been on Instagram or whatever apps there are, there's so many, these are very, very common. Some more tools for photography for liquefying. So this might be something to add a very dramatic element in your image. It doesn't have to be necessarily about water, but it does feel that way. So it's going to be hard in this image specifically, but I can play with this flower by pushing it, and it kind of makes it very wavy and silly. I can enlarge. I keep clicking, kind of makes it a little bigger. It's kind of hard to see. I can make it a little bigger. There we go. Which kind of, you know, where are you going to do it that looks good? That's how you have to think minimal, not go crazy, but it's fun to go crazy to see how the tool works and then figure out where it's going to work on your image. And swirl is going to add crazy, crazy swirls to your image. And it will affect the background if your background's attached to the image you're working on. So that's why mine's all blending together right now. We can retouch images. So that's going to change, like if you're working on a portrait and there's skin blemishes or hair in the way, that's what these retouching tools can do. We can draw and paint directly on top of an image using just a paintbrush. Change the scale. And now we're going to talk about the text tool. So when we use the text tool, on the right side toolbar, a new layer automatically appears. This top bar lets you rotate it, and you can move it. And you can type right in it if you double click, or you can change it on the left side. You can change the case. And here you can change fonts and color, size, spacing. Oh, that's line spacing. Line spacing we'll have if we have more than one. Image in here. And how far they're separated. And letter spacing. So it's kind of getting into a lot of details. But since it's on another layer, now you can do a little bit more with what this looks like. So I wanted to talk about the blending modes and how that can affect an image. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And I'm going to just, it's random orange and things are different colors. But what blending mode does is affects the top layer to what is underneath it. So right now it says none. If I click multiply, it automatically changes that color tone a little bit. But if I click and move this, you see how that W is kind of on top of that flower and it's coming through? A little bit it's coming through in that image. So multiply means it's coming through and they're looking at each other. And that's what all of these blending modes do. Screen lightens it, but it still kind of blends together. Overlay gives it a whole different look. So the color is affecting, and so is what's happening. The transparency you can change as well. So there are a lot of tools you can play with. So I will start working on a fresh image, and we'll see where we get. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I'm going to talk about my poster a little bit while I'm working, but let me know if anyone has anything to ask. So before I add another image in here, I'm going to adjust some of those colors and lighting that we looked at. And make this a little less bright purple, maybe a little warmer. And I kind of liked how that was looking more pink. Just a little bit though. It was less harsh. Like a little bit brighter overall. And that looks better. Maybe later we'll add a vignette. I'm going to add another image, and it's going to be a dragonfly. And this dragonfly is way too big. So I'm just going to shrink it down to like 500. And he's all the way over there. So I have to zoom out, which I'm just scrolling with my trackpad to find him. Now, I don't want this background on the dragonfly, so I have to go to the scissors and figure out which tool I'm going to use to cut it out. I'm going to start with the magic cutout tool first because it's the easiest. And I'm going to try, I usually like to try like 30s first because that gives me like a little bit medium range of how much color I need to use. So if I start with this background, I was afraid that I might get too close to his wings. So I'll try 20. Which isn't too bad. And then to get all this out, there's a lot more to do. So I'm just lassoing everything else around this dragonfly, which I could do the dragonfly with a lasso tool, but that could be a little bit more tricky, especially because of the wings. And I'm just trying to get out the big blocks first before I can get to the little details. And I don't think that this program has a specific eraser tool, at least not in Pixlr X. They might in E, but that's okay. Oh, I think I got rid of his wing a little bit. But I can show you guys a trick. And this is where I might go back in and try and like get more out in the middle space with the magic cutout tool. And I'm just trying to pick up that light color. Okay, that's okay. I'm going to leave a little bit more on him. We talked about the repair and retouch. So this Band-Aid lets me heal certain parts of an image. So let's see if I try and repair some of his wing, what happens. Gets a little splotchy, which I don't want, so I'll just undo it. You can stamp it, so I can collect this information of his wing in one area that I click on, and if I click again, it kind of pastes it in. Kind of. I can sharpen an area, which I don't really want to do since that place isn't good. And I can burn an area. Overall, his wing is not really there right now, but again, that's okay. We're just gonna delete that part of the wing. It's okay, he'll still be a cute dragonfly. Okay, I want to make him a little bigger. And I want him to look like he's sitting on a flower. And what happens, this is very common. Since I was so zoomed in before, there's more of the image before that didn't get cut off, which is okay. Oh, but I make sure that I hit remove so I don't see it anywhere. So something that looks weird to me is that the dragonfly now needs a different color tone because he's so bright when my image is so saturated. So there's a couple different ways to do that. We can use the blending modes and kind of go through different options that make him blend with the image. But those are going to be very harsh, and I still want him to stand out. So I'm going to go back to adjusting the color of the dragonfly a little bit and change his brightness, bring his saturation down. Just enough. And not so vibrant either. Which is a little better. And now I'm going to add text. Now, this is random. Sometimes if you're creating a poster or you're creating something, I just use placeholder text, which they give you. This was something that was already written in here, so I can just play with that. Now, something to notice is where my flowers are. My flowers are coming out from the bottom right, so I might want to create some asymmetry here and use my text that's left aligned, which is hard to see until there we go. My text is very large, but I can change the typeface of this. I did not get into details about typography because I think it'll take another hour on its own. But right now I'm just looking for something very light and simple that is not too overly cheeky, which I think is the problem with most like quick poster art, is that it could be cheeky, and we wanted to look sophisticated just like they're telling us here. So that looks pretty simple. I'm going to highlight this text, and I want to use my color picker to pick out a deep purple. So this purple's coming directly from the flowers. So this purple is more related to the image than a purple from the top toolbar that's suggested for me. So with how deep this purple is, my eye almost wants to go directly to the text instead of my image and the flowers and the dragonfly. So maybe I want to actually scale this down a little bit. Maybe everything's a little bit more separated. And I add more line spacing. Right until it hits, I don't want it to hit right on top of it. Right until it touches, almost touches the lavender. And actually, something maybe more where it like can fit inside of something could be more exciting and a little bit more, it might be able to fit better together. And you can play with the adjustments of like your text alignment. And how it fits. So already there's some things starting to come together. And I'm still not 100% sure about the scale of the dragonfly. Maybe he's very tiny. Have to make sure you're selected on the image. And there's more of that background still there. But him being tiny might be just enough. And it's kind of like he's on the stem, which is why I rotated him that direction. But what I like is I will show you on a new layer that goes to the top here, is if I use the drawing tool, the line that he creates, I'm going to put this underneath him. The line that he creates brings my eye to the text. So the cool part about the layers panel is that you can move things around. So if I draw something and I want to put this heart, oh, I drew the heart right on top of the background. If I have a new layer with the drawing on it, you can move it between different layers and it can show up or not show up. It can go right on top of the text. So it can depend on where you want to move things. That kind of creates this collage composition. And I'm going to delete that. This helps you organize your files very easily. Now, one of the things you might be wondering is why I didn't really create a grid to begin with. And it's very easy to visualize the simplest grid, the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds was the 2 by 2. And that's something that you can always keep in mind without having to draw that out. But if that's something that is more easy to understand if you have it aligned, then it's very easy to do. Let's see if this works. Nope. There's some, if we were using Pixlr X, we can actually bring out guidelines in here, but you can kind of create some tick marks that give you the rule of thirds. And this is on its own grid here. So I'm going to change this layer name to grid. And we can actually hide it or make it visible. So we don't have to keep it visual in our poster at the end. Okay, and then you can save your poster, and you can download this. If you want to save things, save it as a JPEG. If it has that checkerboard background and you want it to be transparent, save it as a PNG. And when you close, your image will still be in your Pixlr files. All right, so I hope you guys enjoy. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Do you have to make an account for the Pixlr website, or does it just, oh.
Yeah, you do not need to make an account.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is really helpful.
Great, thanks. I did not take the photo. Oh, and yes, you can apply multiple filters to the same photo, but try not to. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, but play with them to see what you like.
Well, if there are no other questions, thank you to everyone for attending tonight's virtual program. You can join Anna next month on September 30th at 6 o'clock for a motion graphics program. And you can visit our website, slpl.org, and click on virtual events to see a list of all the upcoming programs we have. And tonight's program was hosted by Creative Experience. We're a digital makerspace at the library. You can find us at Central Library and Barr Library, so come in and visit. You can use our recording room or 3D printers or work on these kinds of digital projects. And right after this, I'm going to send everyone a survey for your feedback and some information on what programs you might like to see next. Thank you.